Hello friends, Jenkins Dota here, bringing you another Dota 2 video on behalf of DotaAlchemy.com, and this is going to be part of the What Went Wrong video series, and this is going to be episode 2 in the series. This replay was a Pudge game submitted by Bamboozled on the Dota Alchemy Discord, and I basically asked in the Discord, hey, do you guys have any Pudge replays where you feel like you should have won and you didn't? So that's what we're going to check out here. And before anybody points it out in the comments, yes, I am indeed recording this while I am queuing for a match. Hey man, I'm just being efficient and it's TI season. Anyway, without further ado, let's just get right into it. So the first thing that I want to point out is that this replay is from the Archon bracket. You guys recommended in the previous video that I should essentially state what the rank that the video, or the replay rather, comes from, and of course that is a great idea. The first thing that I want to point out is that you just moved your camera to the top lane, saw 3 heroes, and therefore you know that it's just a Dazzle and a PL down here protecting their bounty rune. You hooked the bounty rune, which is an excellent play. I'm really glad you got the bounty because you guys are in a dual lane scenario. However, I think that what you should have done there is you should be actually running in and being really aggressive on their rune. Whenever you're playing an aggressive dual lane like this, especially one that's extremely strong and is looking to pressure a lot, you want to take as much as you can get as early as possible. And I think as soon as you see 3 heroes, and even before that, just because you have such a strong dual lane, you want to run to the enemy rune, not even with the purpose of getting the rune. Obviously you want to get it, but it's more so you can pressure them and get as much damage on them as you possibly can before the game actually starts. Because if you take away 2 tangos in a salve or something like that at the start, or get a first blood, it completely destroys in the lane. It makes it so much harder for them to lane against you without sending out regen, which of course would screw over their mid laner. So it's really, really good to do that, especially when you're in a really strong lane, and even more so when you see that there are 3 heroes in the top lane. So the next thing that I want to point out is that your initial play in the lane where you hit this PL is absolutely excellent. This is exactly what you want to do on this hero. Go into the lane, abuse the fact that you have that 150 pure damage nuke, but after this it kind of seems like you're not entirely sure what to do, simply because the lane is pushing into you because they have a Dazzle and a double range creep. So you can see here it's 1 minute 30 seconds, and for about 2 minutes you are kind of just running around. Running around here is fine because you're salving up, that makes sense. You don't want to get your salve taken off, obviously, but there is a lot of downtime in this lane, which is supposed to be a very, very high pressure lane that you are just kind of running around and soaking experience. You even run towards mid to go for a gank, but really Ember Spirit's not a hero that you can realistically gank, and you have a stout shield, so you're taking a very long time to move between these lanes. It's very, very ineffective in terms of pressuring the lane, and this is something that can really hinder your gameplay. And as you can see, it was about 1 minute and 30 seconds when you are essentially thinking about doing too much, when really your job is to simply go down here and constantly throw out hooks like you just did. Just do that over and over and over again, and I see that you're looking at the other lanes a lot, but that's not your job. Your job is not to win this lane. Your job is not to win the mid lane with the Invoker, who should be beating the Ember Spirit because it's a counter. Your job is to apply pressure to that bottom lane, and as you can see from the PL's farm, he's actually getting a lot of CS, and from the initial hook, I thought that this guy was going to get completely destroyed in this lane, because if you kept hitting hooks like that, well, he's not going to have any regen. Look at this, he has 1 tango left. If you hit 1 single other hook on this guy, he has no regen, and he's about half HP, so he has to either use the courier from mid, which screws over the enemy mid, which makes your Invoker win, or he's going to essentially lose this lane really, really terribly. But because you just stopped hooking and you were paying a lot more attention to the other lanes and trying to win those when that's not your job, this guy's getting huge, so essentially you're not doing your job in this game as a Pudge simply because you're trying to do too much on the map. One thing also that I want to say is that if you're going to look to rotate, number 1, you need to make sure that before the game actually starts, you realistically consider what heroes you can kill in the game, and in my opinion, in the laning phase, it's pretty unlikely that you kill an Ember Spirit, simply because he has this Flame Guard, and your Invoker is not going Quas Wex, so he can't take it off. You can definitely kill the Dazzle, you can definitely kill the Sand King, potentially kill the Centaur if you're there very early. In the PL, you can apply a lot of pressure with that hook, so it's very important to actually consider who you can kill, because I don't think that going to the mid lane is going to be very effective. And with that being said, you also started with a stout shield. So when you have a stout shield, your intent is to essentially sit in the bottom lane and just be a huge bully where you're just constantly throwing out the harass and punishing this PL. And if they hit you, then you have the stout shield to essentially protect you. That's kind of the point of the stout shield. If you want to do that roaming, even though I don't think the Ember's a great hero to roam on, I would say you get a Windlace, because like I said earlier, you wasted a lot of time walking around in this game, and doing that with just one of the slowest heroes in the game and no stout shield is very, very ineffective. And then with that being said, if you're going for the stout shield build and you just want to sit in lane and bully, then what you should do is buy a bunch of clarities, and probably 2 mangoes and 2 clarities, so that way you can actually constantly chunk out that hook. And you're not going to sit around doing nothing in the lane, because honestly, in this situation where you were sitting down here doing nothing, it makes sense because you don't actually have the regen to sustain a bunch of hooks. So I understand why you didn't want to bother just sitting down here and trying to hook, because after using 2 hooks, you'd be totally out of mana. So you essentially need clarities if you're going to go for that build. So you kind of essentially went for a half and half build, and it really, really hurt your gameplay in terms of what you actually want to do as your job in this game. So another example that I think shows that you are caring way too much about every single lane and trying to win every single lane is you TP'd top, and once the fight was over, you started walking bot at about 6 minutes, 40 seconds, something like that, and you literally just walk all the way back to the bottom lane, because of course that's a lane that you should be in. So I understand why you're doing that, because it's kind of your job as a 4-roll to be down there. So you walk all the way bot, and then when Ursa gets gone on, you TP back top. So you basically, the time that you spent walking was useless, and you use the TP scroll, which is 50 gold, just to get back to the exact same place. So that's a bunch of time that you spent not getting experience, and of course it costs you money and mana to get that, to use that TP scroll. So I really think that a huge way that you can affect your gameplay and have a positive impact on that is to essentially think about what your job is in that game, and don't give a fuck if your team is bitching to you. If that's not your job to win this lane, then you should not be going up here, because you can see in this game how much time you're wasting by essentially trying to win every single lane and try to help everybody in the game. The reality is, in Dota, there are only so many lanes that you can go to, so many people that you can help, and that's something that you have to recognize. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of yo-yoed around the map like this, and it's going to be really, really bad. And here you can see even more, because you use the TP scroll, even more walking around, kind of doing nothing, where, of course, you need to walk, but that's only because there's this idea of trying to go to every single lane and try to help out every single lane. But I really think that the way that you can help out every single lane is to, instead of going to those lanes, you apply so much pressure down here with your Enchantress, maybe even push the tier 2, because he's already owning, that the whole enemy team has to come deal with you. And that way, you're not spending all this time risking just kind of walking around doing nothing, and you're still applying that same pressure. You'll actually win all of the other lanes way more easily just by applying immense pressure to this one lane instead of having to go to all 3. From watching this whole replay, what I would say your biggest vice is when you play Pudge is not your mechanics at all, because mechanically it actually seems like you're really good at hitting hooks, you hit your dismembers, you know exactly what to do when, like, this, you know, the Sand King goes invis and you solo kill him. Like, there's a lot of really sweet mechanical plays that are actually going on in this game. However, with that being said, I noticed that you play very responsively, you play very defensively, and in my opinion, in Dota, playing defensively is a lot worse than playing offensively, simply because when you respond to a tower being pushed like this and you try to kill the Sand King here, you're not really accomplishing anything if you do end up killing him, because he wasn't pressuring that tower realistically, he was just pushing in the creep wave. If you're TPing up here to farm because you need a particular item, then that makes sense, but there's a lot of points in this game where you could take an aggressive movement, and instead of doing that, you simply TP rotate to defend something, even if it doesn't necessarily need to be defended. You kind of do it for kills, which I can understand on Pudge. However, instead of going to the heroes, you can actually bring those heroes to you by staying on their side of the map, by pressuring the lane, by pressuring a single lane that you want to be in, especially in a lane that has a lot of vision. So for example, if you're fighting this bottom lane here and you didn't TP top, not only would you be fighting with your team, but you'd be fighting around this ward right here, so you'd be able to hit really nice hooks. So And then if you do end up killing the enemy team, you get this tower for free. Whereas, like, if you kill this guy, the Sand King, what happens? There's no tower here to take. You're alone. You're kind of in a situation where, once again, you have to walk all the way bot. So I'd basically say, if you want to improve your Pudge play massively, what you want to do is think aggressively instead of defensively. Don't try to do everything on the map. Don't try to deal with everybody. Don't try to just go for kills because people are pressuring you. Instead, you need to pressure them. You need to make their carry so pissed off that the entire enemy team will come to you and try to deal with you as a Pudge. And in particular, you probably want to play around vision and around heroes that can help you get kills as well, which of course would be in this bottom lane area. So the final thing that I want to point out about this video is that essentially you guys took fights, won them, and then immediately moved to an objective, which is excellent. That's exactly what you should do in Dota. You want to be immediate in your movements around the map. That is excellent. However, with that being said, as you can see with this push, you guys are being very greedy with what you take after you win fights. This game was basically a textbook throw. I think that the early game mistakes on the Pudge, aka kind of running around and acting very defensively and responsively, is definitely a mistake. I'm not saying it's not. However, despite this, you guys were outplaying them, and as a result, you're winning. You have a gold lead. However, with that being said, it seems every time you win a fight, the gold lead kind of dwindles simply because you take an objective, you go try to push an objective, and then you overstay your welcome. That's kind of the big issue here. And this point is where the game really turns around for them. You overstay your welcome on the high ground, you get one Rex, you get the tower, which is great. You should have left at that point because they're all respawning. Go take the shrine safely. Wait until you have an initiation, you have a better fight, you have more items. Maybe go take Roshan, which should be up soon. There's a lot of stuff that you could do essentially that's better than just, sitting there and taking that fight on their turf, which obviously is going to be much more difficult than taking the fight on your terms when you get an initiation or something like that. And so basically that's the final kind of issue in this game that I saw, is that a lot of the time you guys would take fights without resources. You would keep pushing even though the entire enemy team is respawning, and as a result you kind of get to this point where they actually have the lead and you don't. Like, this keeps happening. In particular, this Roche fight that we're going to see right now, once again, you overstay your welcome. Ursa has no ultimate. They don't really have much Roche potential. You can just go Shrine up, which the Shrine is available, and come back in and then take the Roshan, but you kind of overcommit. For this Roshan, as you can see, the Ursa is going for it, even though the Shrine is available. And this is kind of a whole team thing, but like I said, basically after the laning phase, after the mistakes, of kind of the responding to pressure instead of applying it, where I do think you guys should have stomped this a lot harder, you won anyway, and then kind of did a textbook throw where you're just overstaying your welcome at objectives despite having an advantage. And then as you can see, the enemy team gets Roshan at this point after a couple of overstaying of welcomes. And after this, the game is kind of over. You guys are against a very strong late game lineup, and you never really come back because the rest of the game becomes very defensive, and playing very defensive, especially against a late game lineup like this, they eventually just win. So basically, like I said, after this point, the game is just at a disadvantage. You're defending. Eventually, they just take all of your objectives. Textbook thrown game. So thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I do genuinely appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions for what you'd like me to cover in this series, I would really appreciate that, because this series originally was a suggestion on the channel, one of the comments, and I thought it was a really good idea, so basically I started doing it. But if there's anything that you guys want me to kind of cover in this video series, maybe pro replays, maybe my own replay, something like that, that'd be great. I just want to know what you guys are interested in. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.